Oh yeah, I have advice to you for the next time we do a full episode, and that is you should maybe consider what I'm doing, which is keep the microphone off angle and then swivel it in its stand, because when it's facing forward, you just basically are talking like without you don't make eye contact with anyone when we record anymore. It's really odd.
Okay.
It's weird. Like I kind of deliberately tried to change my setup so that I can see everyone.
Sure.
And not that their content is different, but it makes me weirded out. Like I look over there and just see you like speaking. Anyway, thanks everyone for listening to episode 150, wherein I give Chris microphone posture advice.
Thanks, Jake.
Don't mention it, Chris. Anyway.
I lean away from the mic to breathe in.
What is that?
Fucking chocolate rain. All right, let's...
You're the worst combination of things.
Oh, really?
Coming from me, that means a lot. Hello, everyone. Let's just knock this out real quick. It's just a little note about how the episode got destroyed.
Easy. Hello there.
Hi.
I'm Chris Remo.
I'm Jake Rodkin. We're introducing ourselves, I guess, which is just so our names can be a mark of shame for what we're about to describe.
Personal brand thing.
Yeah.
I want to be associated with train wrecks. So we recorded an Idle Thumbs podcast. We recorded Idle Thumbs episode 150 this week with Jake and me, but also Steve, Nick, and Sean. So all five.
And a special appearance by Jay Allard.
Yeah, it was amazing.
And like I walk in, Clint Hawking surprise reveal partway through. It was an amazing episode.
Yeah, and we had there was a big dog sort of just hanging out, buzzing away, which I guess was a bad idea. Because apparently the episode got like corrupted in some kind of impressively total way that like I've never before seen when we've had audio problems with our podcast. It just sounds like robots having a 2-hour long.
Yeah, like
party.
it wasn't like pyramid head static that we had on your old equipment. It wasn't like one voice dropping out.
It was full digital corruption.
It sounds like we're still talking. Like you can kind of hear it, but it sounds like it sounds like the big dog in the room, like the way it hears and processes speech, accidentally got wired into the mixing board, and that's what we have now. Like we have the audio equivalent of like the Terminator vision, so it's totally imperceptible, except the part where he was sizing up Nick Brecken's clothes and his motorcycle.
So instead, we record. Well, not instead, but we luckily also have a GDC Conf grenade that we recorded with Tom Francis, creator of Gunpoint, that we're just going to give you this week instead. So sorry about that. So it's a good discussion with that guy. Get ready for the real 150 whenever it happens soon.
Yep. Are we going to include a sample of what 150 sounded like?
Yeah, sure. Here, enjoy this glimpse into your dark robotic future.
And now, the Idle Thumbs Conf Grenade with Tom Francis. It's
the first and possibly only GDC Conf Grenade for 2014. I am Chris Remo.
I'm Jake Rodkin.
I'm Sean Vanneman.
And we are joined by special guest Tom Francis, the creator of Gunpoint and the upcoming Heat Signature, and also a former journalist and really good guy.
Thanks. Hello.
Did you say like formerly a really good guy?
Well, yeah. I mean, when he was a journalist,
that was a dangling modifier.
I thought he was a great guy, but now he's like a successful asshole developer. So, I mean, please.
Yeah.
I've noticed that as a
actually,
trend.
although I think you feel like a pretty good guy to me right now, though, because your badge says Media PC Gamer on it.
Yeah, I'm back to being press for like a couple of days.
That's cool.
That's pretty cool.
How did that?
I was going to actually, I was going to ask you about that, but
but then I did.
So what happened was...
But I was not going to.
I wasn't giving a talk or anything, and I wasn't in the IGF, and so I would have to buy a pass.
I was going to say, and then you realize that the Game Developers Conference costs money.
Didn't I just used to like walk on air and get everything for free? Wasn't there some way you can do that?
Didn't I just eat ham wraps and ham duets like there was just no tomorrow? At zero cost?
Like those tiny little sliders.
Oh, gosh.
Back when you were such a great guy.
Yeah.
He just wanted to give you things. But now they're like, he could afford it.
So are you actually, you're like, don't mean to put you on the spot here, but as a journalist, I feel it's safe. Are you actually like filing stories on stuff that's going on here, or are you?
No, I'm just committing fraud.
Okay.
No, I am actually reporting on, but it's totally flexible. I just said like, hey, if I if you give me a press pass, I'll cover some stuff, and it will just be the stuff that I think is interesting, and maybe I can give like an indie developer's perspective on it and talk about like some of the more nitty gritty stuff, because I think not many people go to the really technical stuff and then report on it to non-technical people.
Yes,
and that's not all I'm doing, but I'm going to do that for one talk because I saw one about the Havoc AI system, which is like a piece of middleware that they're doing, that they are using to like map out all the different ways you can traverse like irregular terrain in like a free running game. You know, like instead of a level designer manually placing a vault marker that says you can vault over this table because it's the right, and so use this animation.
It just like deploys AI as a fluid,
like
basically.
The spiders crawl across the whole thing. He didn't call them spiders. I just made that up, and that was weird.
They probably deploy.
Cool, though.
They have a big red button inside of the tool that just says spiders, and when you press that, your level becomes terrifying.
The downside is level is then covered in actual spiders, but changes the aesthetic a little bit. But yeah, I just wanted to say that the like technical level of that stuff is like a little bit beyond what I actually properly understand, but I can get most of a handle on it because it's about segment casting, which I haven't done, but that's a bit like ray casting, which I have done, and so I can like take my best stab at giving a layman's interpretation of what this actually means, and basically the underlying message is just like, isn't it insanely fucking complicated when you find out how this really simple looking stuff actually works?
Right.
That's cool. That seems like a really great beat. Like that's a good thing for a publication to do, even if it only resulted because you thought it might be a good way to go to GDC. It still seems like that's something that I wish were more institutionalized. You know, like I wish there were more I don't know what format it would come in, because obviously, as everyone here knows, it's really time consuming to make a game, and it's not as though people making games have tons of time to go, report on things all the time. But I do think it's a really fascinating area. Like, Gamasutra has a bit of that for sure. Although most of the stuff on the Gamasutra front page is full-time editorial staff. But
even still, it's also more trade focused. It's industry reporting for industry readers instead of developers reporting.
I guess Game Developer Magazine used to be more like that, because Game Developer Magazine would have developers who would write like each month there was the programming column and
but
the
even so that was still
so
for the intended audience is exclusively developers, whereas like you don't see PC Gamer covering
you're totally right.
Like various things in the casting genus, like spider casting.
Spider casting is a new one to us.
I wonder, I guess it just is more complicated to put that together.
Also, I think developers like developing games, and then when you say, how do you feel about going and writing a bunch of stuff that is not your video game?
Yeah.
Grumpy.
Yeah.
I think it's also I always found when I was interviewing people that they kind of fell into the category of can talk really, really well to press, but doesn't really understand the technical side of things, or understands the technical side of things and doesn't understand how to phrase it in layman's terms. Or I think a third category where people probably can phrase it in layman's terms, but they feel like they can't. And so I had so many interviews where I'm talking to someone who really, really knows their stuff, and I really want to hear the stuff. I want to hear like the really nitty-gritty stuff, even if it makes no sense to me. And they just won't do it. They'll just say, oh, well, it's just very complicated. And it's just like, there's all these methods. And that was always like a little bit frustrating. I always wanted to say, look, it's fine. If you just babble a bunch of stuff I don't understand, at least it'll have the accurate information. And I can, if I do make sense of it, I can, actually make something interesting out of it.
Right.
That's a good point. I mean, that's something that, I guess maybe the way that this is addressed is just from the other angle, right? Because when, Tom, you're talking about interviewing someone for, explicitly for a consumer audience, presumably. And so there are all of these like expectations about what it means to give an interview about your game. And like, it's intended to be a promotional thing. And, it's supposed to highlight like the things that are awesome on the end user side and blah, 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 as opposed to being about process and technical considerations and things like that. But also now there are there are some developers who are trying to show more of the process just directly without going through an intermediary. And maybe that's just the way that stuff gets out there.
Yeah, you were the king of that.
You do that, for instance.
Yeah.
Thanks, I think.
Yeah.
I think I probably hit the thing that people are worried about with that stuff, which is that it does go over people's heads, and some people, the most technical stuff I've been showing has been with the game I'm trying to make in Unity, which is like, because I'm learning Unity at the same time, I actually show people my code and just say, here's what this line is doing and that kind of thing. And that goes really techie and in-depth. And I don't think those are getting as much interest as my heat signature stuff, which is much simpler. And I just show you, here's what I made. Here was the universe on day 1 where it had stars, but it wasn't infinite. Here's the universe on day 2 where it is infinite. And explaining how some of that stuff works, but not in like an actual technical way. And that stuff's done better. But I don't really care about the other one. I think the way I see all that stuff is like, it is kind of promotional, but that's not really why I'm doing it. I'm just kind of, I just want to talk about it a bit. Like I'm working alone in a bedroom and I just kind of want to like, here's what I did today. I'm proud of it. I want to show it to somebody. So I show it to everybody and it helps like a little bit. You get like a small following of people who like this stuff and want to hear about it. And most of them are actually developers. They're like, particularly those of aspiring developers who often comment to say like, oh, thanks for doing this because I've worked on something like that myself and it was interesting. And they're never going to be like a big enough audience to actually be, make your game a success. But I think there's some value in having that following all the way from the start. Because I get people still saying about Gunpoint, like, oh, I was following that from day 1. Like, literally, when you started making that game, I started following it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that stuff's really important.
I mean, go ahead.
No, it's really easy to sort of like, especially as you move forward and have more success or whatever, like whether it's commercially or whatever, to like forget that like that's important to the process and focusing it. Like if it doesn't equate to dollars, right? If it's not like, oh, well, this equated to like 10,000 customers or 5,000 customers, but like being able to externalize your process is like the most important thing ever. That's like, I don't know. I think it's really good. And also to have a small number of people who have been with you since the beginning, that's really powerful. Both like to the people they tell to play your games and also to like keep you honest, keep you honest to the sort of things you want to make. It's cool
that there's something that is sort of emotionally, I think, very valuable about that because on the internet, yes, Jake perks up.
My domain.
The internet. Oh, but it is kind of inherently transient. Like it's
right.
It's very easy to just jump around from community to community or product to product, especially the way games are marketed. Like stuff tends to be like really pushed hard at launch and then just like falls away. And so when you do manage to have a community, group of people who have been following you for years and years, potentially, like there's something that's really, I think, powerful about that for both parties involved. Like it's because it's something that you can't. There's no shortcut to it. Like there's no version of it that you can just have a theoretically huge marketing budget and then have that retroactively.
Exactly right.
Like it only exists. Like it's proof that you've been engaging and that you've been like staying honest to something that those people were interested in for an extended period of time. Like we recently had all of our like crazy Idle Thumbs 10th anniversary stuff, and we had these crazy paintings to our office, and like the guy who did my painting, for example, has been on our forums for fully 10 years, and it's like that is a crazy thing to think about. And like you say, obviously it's not a majority of the people who played your game, but like to know that there are people who saw the thing that you're making now, like when you started doing it. In your case, I think that's particularly fascinating because you had not made a game before, or you had not published a game before. So that means that those people have been witness to literally the entirety of your game development career.
Yeah, that's a weird thought, actually.
Yeah, like that to me feels very powerful.
Yeah,
that should hopefully make you feel really uneasy, and then you funnel all of Gunpoint money into Gunpoint 2, which is completely silent mode, closed development, and then bring 3 specialists in at the very last minute to recruit like a street team, like a Gunpoint street team, and then that will go viral, and it'll basically have like the same effect, or maybe like a bigger effect, or like. It'll definitely hit more quadrants, and there's going to be like some sort of halo effect.
Well, you're gonna get newer and better customers that way.
Think about the key influencers that you'll be
just as young as possible.
Yeah.
Is there a way I can monetize teens in this?
Of course.
Oh yeah,
okay, good.
You
step 1 is to monetize those teens. That is step 1, 2, and 3. I think.
Yeah.
Do you guys feel like you can't show too much too early because your stuff is more narrative driven?
It just depends what you just show different things. I mean, I
don't think so.
There are certain things that are like, you know, to what you were saying earlier about some of your more in-depth stuff. Like there are certain things that are just not quite as conducive to showing all the time. Like definitely at Double Fine, we found that people loved big in-depth programming posts, but those can't be the thing you put out like every week.
Yeah.
You know, because it's just the audience of people who's going to like really get a lot out of that is fairly small. But like when, like for example, Oliver Fronsky, the lead programmer on Broken Age, like when he decides just like, okay, I'm just going to deep dive into like our shader system or into like a crazy bug roundup. Like he'll just do that once in a while when there's something like really cool that he can talk about and then people go nuts for it. But like, you know, there's certain things that are more repeatable. Like you can always show early art. People always love that. And then narrative stuff, I think there's there's less of a like mechanical process that you even could show there. Like it's, you know, writing is like revision and things like that, which don't show up in like a set of
right. It ends up being
photos.
Like, check out how we're developing the story. It's a photo of a corkboard with a bunch of post-it notes, all of which are blurred.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and even that, for example, is interesting as part of a like snapshot of like, this is what our office looks like right now.
Yeah.
This is what that board looks like. It's roughly this cluttered and crazy. But like, yeah, you're not going to want to keep posting that in detail.
Like I backed the Broken Age Kickstarter and I followed that thing really religiously.
Yeah,
and I thought that they did a really good job of showing the evolution of the game, even though it's an adventure game. Obviously, it's just story by basically just taking a core sample of that one environment, and that was the cloud colony screen. Yeah. So you just see that go from a really rough sketch to a little bit better sketch, to characters walking around inside of it, the characters talking, to it having effects, to it getting lighting, and they just did that devoid of all context.
Yeah, it's really impressive actually, because I watched, what is it, like 6 hours about the development of that game, and then I played it and like nothing was spoiled really. Yeah, I knew what the two main characters looked like, and that was it. Like,
they did a great job with
which you would have known anyway, because they would have been in all the art for the game. Yeah, but no, Jake, that's a really good point. Like I wonder I don't even know whose idea that was. I don't really remember. But it was really smart in that it allowed an incredible deep dive into an actual real, not like sham part of the game. But yeah, I mean, you get there and you're like, oh, right, I know that this exists, but
you don't know anything about it.
Yeah. It's cool.
Yeah.
We have to still sort of figure that out. I mean, we're obviously putting a bunch of stuff up as we go, but what we do and don't share. I mean, I don't think we're going to actually like make crazy rules about it. It's more to sort of what do people end up actually want to dump on the blog naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's definitely,
I think it's
the
pretty,
full script.
I'm also like never worried about giving anything away, because I know there's like, there's certain things that just would never make their way there that I think are going to be the like really like keystones of the experience. You know what I mean? Like, and so much of it's not even an issue of being narrative, right? It's more of an issue of just it being handcrafted content, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's the handcrafted content stuff that has to get like really revved on and like really polished, and like it's that last 5% that's a really hard part with that, and it's kind of hard to just show that stuff as a snapshot. But we have enough other stuff going on, which is really nice, because it's like not an adventure game. Like there's like movement mechanics and like like a dialogue system, and like we've built some tools, like, and that stuff is, I think, pretty great.
Because I actually didn't show story of Gunpoint when I was doing it. I made the whole game without a story, and then I added the story at the last minute without showing anybody. And it went through like one test with the story in, and I changed one thing about the story, and then it just released the game. So it was like the actual story part I didn't show. But I did show, I guess, handcrafted stuff, because it has handcrafted puzzles, and I had to demo the game in some way. And so I showed and I showed me completing levels, which I guess was a spoiler for those puzzles, but I never heard anyone complain about that, I don't think.
Yeah, the story, Gunpoint having a story was, it was a good surprise for me. At least. Like, having followed the blog and, like, oh, this is a game where you smash through windows and punch a guard a million times and rewire doors and stuff. Oh, okay, just kidding. There's also all this crazy interstitial dialogue tree stuff. That was really good.
I mean, that's basically the model we're following with Firewatch. Is we're just going to make the whole game, and then we're going to
and then just sort of throw
jam
some
the story
story in.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just put it in any cracks you can find. That's what I did. I mean, I literally did put it between the missions. Like it just missions exactly the same as it was before story. Now there's a conversation after it.
It's so funny. I mean, this is I don't know. I don't have a really great point to make about this. It's just sort of a general observation, and maybe it won't go anywhere. But like, it is funny games. This is true of not just games, but I think it's especially true of games because they're so diverse and such a wide variety of things. Like you talk about, you made this whole game, then you like stuck a bunch of story into it, and it doesn't feel like that to play it because the structure of that game, it naturally makes sense. But there's other games where you play them where theoretically the story is more like tightly woven into everything that's going on, but you still get the feeling that it was kind of like bolted on later. It's funny how I don't know. That just goes to. It's one of the things that reminds me that like best practices are so often meaningless.
Well, they don't actually mean anything. It feels like the singularity of vision is actually the thing that matters.
Yeah.
Right? Like even though you weren't writing the story while you were developing the game, you weren't not thinking about it.
No, I had a plan. I had a plot.
Right? It's not
there was a period when I sat down and figured out what the plot was, and then I didn't write it for like a year, and then a year later I wrote it, the actual script, and the hard part of it, like just writing a story, was pretty easy, and then the hard part was like, why is this story 20 buildings in a row that you break into and get to a computer?
Right. Yeah,
and so that's difficult. But once you've done it, then even if your plot is kind of worse for it, at least hopefully, like you say, it doesn't feel like the one was jammed into the other because like the story is about breaking into 20 different buildings. That's what I wrote a story about.
Yeah,
and I guess I was willing to. I both am the writer, but I'm willing to be abusively dismissive of the writer and say, like, your job is not nearly as important as anything else. So you just got to work around the fact that I made 20 levels. Sorry, I made 20 buildings. You got to come up with a story that fits
Well, when
that.
you're the same person, fuck it. Like, you don't need to worry about offending yourself.
I can treat myself as badly as I like.
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
So on the subject of the technical stuff that is hopefully interesting to lay people at GDC, I saw an AI roundup talk, like micro talks, where AI developers all share like one quick tip.
Was that at the AI Summit?
Yeah. And most of them, like half of them were incomprehensible. The other half were quite obvious. And then there was one that was about just which animation, when to play animations if they are the same. So it was by an animator for Grand Theft Auto. So they obviously had a problem. They have loads of civilians all around, and if they play the same like eating animation right at the same time, it starts on the same frame, it looks instantly like robots. So it kind of breaks everything. And so the basic tip was like, okay, if like you've got bagel eating animations and you've got 3 of them, and you've got 2 people sitting next to each other on a bench eating bagels, then make sure they don't play the same one at the same time. Delay it by at least a second. Like it's talking about the technical side of making a queue for that and making sure that they check with each other. Are you playing this bagel animation? Because I'm about to play this one. And then, okay, I'll delay it by a second.
Just saying the one thing about the bagel thing, when you start extrapolating that out to like the complexity of fucking Grand Theft Auto and
in a city.
Like
but then,
the number of people you can have within your frame at like one time in that game is staggering.
But then the really interesting thing happens when you shoot them. If you shoot at them, like you don't kill either of them, but you just shoot a bullet next to them, they both have to react to a gunshot
at the same time,
and they have to react kind of at the same time, but they can't because you don't want it to look stupid. And obviously, if you fire a bullet into a crowd, no matter how many reaction animations you have, you're going to have that problem. And so he was talking about like, if you can delay it by like a second, but if it's a gunshot, you can't delay the reaction by a second. So he did a lot of experimentation to find the sweet spot. And he reckons it's 300 milliseconds. If you delay it by 300 milliseconds, it still looks like a reaction, but it's just enough that you don't spot the animations exactly the same. Yeah, and he showed a demonstration of it, and he shot at the 2 guys eating a bagel, and they both got up and they were playing the exact same animation, but you really wouldn't know. I couldn't tell it was the same animation at all.
I love talks like that where someone just drills down on a very specific topic. Like, I don't know. Did you guys ever see like this? It's like a legendary talk at this point, but like I think it was Jamie Greason. Who was it? I don't want to get his name wrong, but it was the Halo 2 sniper rifle.
Okay, I heard about this, but I didn't see it.
It was like changing the reload time on like the Halo sniper rifle from like whatever point something seconds to point something seconds, and like how they arrived at that, and like how that rippled out into the into like every facet of the multiplayer game. It's a great talk, and I feel like one of the reasons it's become really legendary is because it's so emblematic of like that, the exact kind of thing you're talking about, of like finding those weird magical points where this is all just bullshit because it's all just made up numbers going to a computer, but like it's possible. Yeah, it was Jamie Griesemer. The weird like moment where you find like some kind of truth in this like system that you're making, even if it's just to represent like people reacting to something, or like finding something like some beautiful balance in a fucking sniper rifle reload, right? Which like isn't necessarily saying anything deep about anything, but like definitely has like, we, you know, Sean, we were talking about playing, this is Halo 3, like we were talking about playing this game, and like there is something like sort of sublime about many moments in that game. And like you're not thinking about this kind of thing when you're actually sitting there playing it, but like ultimately I strongly believe that like we can have conversations about that because this fucking guy, like this is the name of his talk, because he did this shit. Changing the time between shots for the sniper rifle from 0.5 to 0.7 seconds for Halo 3. Like that 0.2 second change, like he unpacks like what that means.
That's the title of his talk?
That was the title of the talk.
God, that is the most boring but also completely
it's
fascinating.
It's incredibly evocative, right? Like it's a well-titled talk because you know he would not have the confidence to call it that unless he was going to deliver the goods.
Yeah.
Like no one would call their talk that and be like, anyway, just kind of made it go a little slower.
I think it's better.
I thought it should be slower.
It's good, right?
Felt better.
Yeah.
Here's all the people we polled. They liked it.
So anyway, I don't know. That stuff is, I think, cool. Yeah. And like hearing people who know their shit like expound on that stuff, I think is fascinating. I think, and that kind of talk, I think, can be really fascinating, both to technical people for whom it's like very practical and like actionable, you know, on a day-to-day basis, but also for people who just think games are cool, and like everybody knows that aspect of Grand Theft Auto kind of instinctually, even if they don't think about it all the time when they're playing the game, because as soon as you start explaining it, it's like, oh right, of course, like obviously that's a huge problem. Like, and even I can even think back to times in Grand Theft Auto where that illusion has been broken. Like I can totally imagine times in Grand Theft Auto where everyone reacts the same way. So like clearly it's a huge problem that they have to think about all the time. I don't know. I think that stuff is really cool.
Yeah.
Games.
So have you guys heard about Peter Molyneux's GDC Orange?
I don't think so.
No.
This is, as a journalist, this is the biggest story, clearly.
Is it really?
It's
because, I mean, any other game developer, clearly it wouldn't be, but I mean, feasibly...
Well, wait till you hear the story. This is told by Elizabeth Simmons, who interviewed him.
Oh, yeah.
She tells the story in the form of a comic, in which, at the end of the interview, Peter Molyneux suddenly throws an object at the ground. And she says, "What was that?" And he said, "It's an orange, but it slipped out of my hand. I was trying to throw it and catch it like a cool person, but it slipped." Doesn't that seem like the most perfect end for Peter Molyneux interview? Just throws an orange at the floor. It's a moment of just utter bafflement.
The way that when you started explaining his response, I thought. So you said he threw an orange at the...
Right, you thought it was going to be... and like
I thought he was
grand metaphor.
Oh, no, that's not what I thought. I thought it was just going to be... I was holding an orange and it slipped. Like, the notion of him just declaring...
and then saying that it slipped.
Oh, it just fell out of my hand.
Record.
Yeah, but like...
Like a weird, like, passive, like Vladimir Putinism?
Yeah, exactly, right.
What I meant to do was not what you saw, but a different thing.
Right.
Like,
I should make it clear that I'm interpreting from the comic, which does not fully represent the motion. And from the comic, it looks like maybe he just dropped it. But then in his explanation, like, he was trying to catch it like a cool person. So if you have an orange in your hand, you want to catch it like a cool person, you got to kind of like throw it up and then like you catch it from the top, you know that thing?
Yeah.
I think that's what he's trying to do.
Snatch it out of the air.
Yeah. So in my head, he like...
So he just spiked it.
Drops it and like just smashes it on the floor.
Yeah.
I hope that happened.
It's...
You guys got any GDC news?
That's... You might have
You
had
do.
the best one.
Yeah.
So
not really. I haven't even seen that much. This is my 11th consecutive GDC.
I ducked into a talk. It was somebody from the National Endowment of the arts.
Oh yeah, the National Humanities.
Yeah, and it was really
Something,
good. It was actually, I mean, it was a micro talk. It was like 10 minutes. It was 3 sort of like academic and like government talks. Very different. The first one was really interesting, and it was just sort of about how academics, especially with media critical studies over time, and even just like literature historians, how important things that artists take for granted are to them to like fill in the gaps of their research, and just sort of like imploring creators to like really document their work. So like,
wow,
good job, Tom.
No problem.
But I liked it a lot, and it also just sort of like made me realize that like I've been sort of like dibble dabbling with journaling, and I'll take like some days I'll do like 4 days out of 5, and then I'll not do it for 5 days, and it just sort of was like reminding me like, oh yeah, keep doing that, because like, not that anything I'm going to say in there is revelatory, but that stuff might even just have personal value. It was really great. It was a really, really good talk. It was then bookended by a woman from the DoD trying to get you to like subcontract for people to like do military simulations, which I was not super into.
Do both.
Like document it well.
Yeah, but
Those
really,
documents will then immediately be destroyed.
You know, like she showed like a piece of machinima that they had made. It looked like it was in
With the DoD lady, or
yeah, that was like
Their
some
dude
guy,
mod.
talk like a Marine story about like helping him deal with his PTSD after an IED attack.
Jesus.
So that was actually pretty good, but it was still like, it's always weird hearing people from the Department of Defense talk. It's very strange. It's very strange. So like, it was just, and I didn't realize until at the end of the talk, she's like, how many people in here are military contractors? And like 15 people stood up, and I was like, whoa, like, I bet these guys really enjoyed that National Endowment of the Arts talk. She's like, so these are the guys you should be talking to if you're looking to subcontract in this space. And I was like, oh my God.
What on earth?
I gotta get out of here.
Crazy.
Yeah, it was really weird.
So you were in like the GDC tax write-off triple talk, basically. Like, is that?
Yeah, well, like tax sinkhole triple talk. Yeah, like.
Oh, I meant for GDC itself. Like, oh, we will happily give 3 of your agencies time at our event. No,
but the Endowment of the Arts though is actually really good. Like, I mean, I'm really excited, especially because it's easier and easier to make it like a game that plays and looks good because of the tool sets that are out there, to see what people actually do with some of that stuff now that like there's government money available for things that aren't necessarily commercial enterprises that are just like
valuable. I see what you mean. You mean like getting art grants and things.
Yeah.
For like art games, like for like non-games,
walking simulators. Like, yeah, yes. That was enjoyable. That's like literally all I saw yesterday. I wanted to go to the Shenmue talk, and then that was a thing that was not allowed because it was packed, and so then I went to this one instead.
Right. That's cool though. That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Did you guys see that Unreal Engine 4 is going down to like
$19 a month,
$19 a month licensing, and you get full source access?
Yeah.
In return for 5% revenue share.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's the right way to go. What's really funny is 22 hours before that, I was on the PC Gamer podcast with Steve, and Steve was like, Unreal should really just get their shit together and compete with Unity.
Yeah.
The 5% is tough. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, it's a bargain for what it is, but like, it doesn't make it an automatic decision. It's really challenging, right? I don't know.
I think for a lot of developers, it will be.
It will be an automatic decision.
Yeah, I think for a lot of developers working at a very small scale.
Yeah.
Like there's
I was going to say people who are working at a scale a little bit bigger than Unity.
Oh, maybe that too.
Where source access is valuable, and you would trade 5% for just full engine code access.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess I was thinking of maybe the thing I'm thinking of is too.
Yeah.
Wow. I might be thinking of too specific a use case, but I was thinking of developers who have spent years in AAA and are like intensely familiar with Unreal technology, because I know a lot of people like that who then leave to go do their own thing. And if they could just jump directly in and be like, well,
also,
Jesus,
$20 a month. It's so cheap.
Yeah.
Because Unity has a subscription, but it's 40. Is that right?
75.
Wow.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how Unity 5 pricing is now that they announced Unity 5, then Unreal announced, or
it's
Epic announced all that stuff.
Thank God.
It took years for this to happen, but it's funny that the like just software, or like not just software, but like digital goods kind of pricing and subscription just sea change that's been happening everywhere is like finally coming to this to like the stodgiest possible,
right?
segment
legitimate
of that
competition
stuff.
of people trying to get.
Yeah.
When Adobe started doing Creative Cloud 2 years ago, that was like,
that felt
okay,
like a big
it's
thing.
people,
and it's awesome. Creative Cloud is fucking great. I love it.
I know. I don't pirate Photoshop anymore. Well, I knew 80-90% of the people I knew, including working professional artists and graphic designers, just didn't own a license to any of that stuff. And now everyone does. So good work with those guys.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised that they charge the $19. Like, that seems like so low that why not just make it free? Why not just make it simpler and it's like 5% of your...
Because I see what you're saying. I mean, I guess as long as there's any price, they're still getting some benefit out of it. But I think at the scale that this is likely to be licensed, they just want to make sure that it's not going to be a support nightmare. I feel like it's better to charge something and then say we are offering some level of support than to offer free to everyone and then none. Like that's
right,
the $20 fence to hop is
if you're like completely just a hobbyist and you're not intending even to ever like monetize this commercially, then you don't really care. But if you're at the level of someone who like doesn't have much of a budget but can afford to put a bit of money towards it, I think you'd rather feel like if I really need like that support, there's something there. It may not be like the level of enterprise kind of support they offer to clients who are just licensing the whole thing outright for $1 million, but like, I don't know.
Is that also still in play? It's $20 a month for full source code access, or $1 million.
I assume they still have standard like
AAA
licensing for people who don't want to give a percentage and like
that's true.
Who need like really high level of support with like frequent. Because I mean, if you're working at the AAA level in Unreal, like you often Epic will work with you on
you need to be able to actually call someone up on the phone who is real.
Why the hell does it work this way?
But I mean, I just know from everyone knows this, like dealing with free services on the internet is awesome that so many of them are free, but it also can be incredibly frustrating that there just isn't even the option in many cases to be like, God, I would just give you a few dollars if I felt like I had any recourse when something goes wrong. Like it just feels like we're all kind of at the mercy of these weird, like, bizarre services that are just now infiltrate every part of our lives. And so if you're doing something that actually requires like a high level of craftsmanship and technical
Imagine
work.
if the Unreal Engine infiltrated every part of your life.
Sick.
Yeah.
God, I think the world would look amazing. It's like magma embers. Yeah.
Do you guys know about the... sorry, this is going to be a total change of subject.
That's welcome and required.
The Alt Control exhibit at GDC.
I don't know that.
It's about alternative controls.
Alt
Control.
Is it like a news group? Alt.recreation.wearables.
It's really good. You got to go there. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a bullshit thing to talk about because it's like, here's some things you can't play at home because they require this weird controller. But it is worth saying how fucking nuts some of these are. And my favorite was by Drocken, the guy who did Starseed Pilgrim.
Mm-hmm.
He's made Analog Defender. It's Defender, guns at the bottom. You're not an individual like moving turret. You have 3 turrets at the bottom of the screen, and then there's Space Invaders coming down to...
Wait, isn't Defender the side-scrolling game, or am I thinking of something else?
Maybe. This is called Analog Defender, and it looks like Space Invaders.
Okay.
And the alien is coming down, but your input method is a steel briefcase that is open on the table and is full of knobs and dials and sliders and flick switches and a cable that goes between one of the display and one of like 3 sockets. So it's a big, like, I'm not sure what they're called, but the thicker audio cables.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of plug.
Like these? Or the quarter inch.
Yeah,
like
the big old style.
Big satisfying thing you stab it into the socket. Yeah. And you are trying to manage all the power systems of your turrets, I guess. And so one of the 3 things you can plug the display into is power, then there's wave, and then there's mode. And when you plug it into power, you see the power levels of your 3 different batteries, and you can kind of switch between them with this massive chunky rotary dial switch thing. And when you switch to a battery, you can like a little like power level kind of bounces back and forth, and you've got to hit the button to lock it at the maximum power that you currently have the capacity to support. Then you switch to the next battery and optimize that one. And then once you've done them all, you unplug the wire and stab it back into like wave, and wave is power like determines the like width of the beam of the laser you fire and how big the explosions are for the explosive weapons. And then wave is about like the accuracy of those things, so they go a bit weird if the wave isn't synced. When you switch to wave, you see two waveforms, one of which you control with two sliders. One is changing the amplitude, one is changing the frequency. You want to match that wave, and it tells you got like a 97% match. Then once that's good enough, you unplug again and plug back into mode. Mode is the different weapons you've got access to, and you have to manually kind of rotate this dial to choose which direction you're going to fire in, as well as which weapon. So for each weapon has 3 different directions it can fire in. So when the enemy's on the left, you've got to turn it all the way to the left and then hit the fire button, which is a big chunky actual button. And then there's 3 switches that are under those like safety caps where you have to flick them up before you flick them, and you can only use them once each per game. And they're all like smart bombs, basically, but of different forms. And all of the controls work all of the time, but if you don't have the display wire plugged into the one you're using, you don't really know what you're doing. So like the power ones, if you want to charge up your power, all your 3 batteries, you want to plug it into the display because you need to see what you're doing, you switch between them, get the levels right. Then when you're actually playing, you fire your guns a bit and your power's depleting. It says on the screen it's like down to 20% or something, and your guns become puny. And so then you just reach over and change the power dial without even going back to actually displaying the power, because you know one of the other batteries has some charge in it. And it's not until they're all depleted that you have to actually go back and, get them all back up to their power levels.
This sounds amazing.
It's so good.
This sounds also totally fascinating.
The game itself is rendered in ASCII, and the ASCII, it's rendered in characters that are colored. And the code, the text that you're actually seeing is the code of the game, which is just the most lo-fi, beautiful thing. I don't know, probably... Actually, I won't guess. But yeah, like the manual task of playing that game is so like physical and clunky and low tech, and like it's desperate as well because there's no pause. It's always they're always coming down for you. You always know they're coming for you. And also when you're switching to these other dials, you can't see them yet, so you've got to go back to the firing mode to actually see what's going on and defend yourself. Jesus. And so you're just scrambling across the control panel. Fuck, I've got to stab it into the wave. Sink the wave. No, the amplitude's good enough. Go back to power. We need to charge the battery. No, just switch the battery. And fire. No, the left fire. And then,
what was this made for? What was it?
Just that box, I think. I think this is the only copy.
I know that, but I mean, like, what prompted... Did he make this for a particular event, or was he commissioned or something?
I think so, but I don't know the name of it. There was something on the explanation thing that said it was made for X, where X is the thing I can't remember. But obviously, it's a perfect for this exhibit.
Yeah, guess we're going over there for that.
God, speaking of just kind of crazy cyber experiences, and that's not cyber. But like
speaking of cyber experiences,
this is actually
games about
non-cyber
games about crazy technology. Yeah. Brendan Chung was showing Quadrilateral Cowboy at the show. It's actually just on display in this section on the ground floor of GDC called the Mild Rumpus, which is just a kind of play space sponsored by the Wild Rumpus, which puts on that party every year. And on the first day of GDC, I think it was the first day of GDC, Brendan just played through the opening. It took him like half an hour because he was talking while he's doing it, just the beginning of Quadrilateral Cowboy, and just talked over it, just gave live dev commentary. I don't know if you saw this.
No.
It was really cool. It was this game that he's making, that he's been working on for a couple of years now, is about designing... it's essentially about designing a like virtual heist plan for like 4 agents to infiltrate a building and like steal something, and you as the crazy kind of cyber hacking lord sitting in your control room are like virtually inhabiting each of these characters to like run through this scenario and like hack into the laser systems and the doors and the like
security cameras
and air vents and all these things to allow these agents to like pass through and steal this shit. And so as you're running around in these missions, you can like mantle up walls, and there's a lot of physicality with the world. But then there's also the hacking part where you're actually typing in commands into your like mobile computing deck to like disable security precautions and things like that. So anyway, it's like an extremely complicated game because you actually have to type things in and like string together these commands that will result in these cool like performative kind of hacking things. and there's a doorbell. Is someone else here?
I think it's...
No, I know who it is. I just mean...
Oh, yeah, somebody's here.
Okay.
Let's keep going.
Anyway, so like he's been taking this game around to festivals and shows and stuff for the last like year, basically, and it's been serving as like just constant ongoing playtesting, which is super important for a game like this because it's not intuitive at all. Like it's like the opposite of how most games operate. Like this game constantly requires you to like stop and assess the situation and like type a bunch of shit, which is there's almost no games require you to type things unless they're explicitly like a text adventure game, and that's the entire interface. You know, like this game it looks kind of crazy, but it also effectively
it's like a stylized first person game.
Yeah, like you run around with WASD and like, you know, click on things and jump and stuff. But also you fucking hack into things nonstop. And he was saying that like he's had to learn how to make this game actually parseable and comprehensible and fun and something approaching intuitive to people playing this game. And what's cool is because since he's taking it to shows like PAX and IndieCade and stuff, he gets a huge age range of people. So he gets like 8, 9, 10-year-old kids all the time because they're like, excited to go to these shows and play games that aren't out yet. But it means that this game that is like, would, I think, on its face, be targeted at probably a slightly older demographic than just most video games, just by virtue of how complex it is. Like he's actually having to learn how to make this playable by kids, because that's been part of his audience for the last year, and he's been achieving it apparently, which is like incredible. It's been cool seeing how he has been thinking about how to train the player to understand how these commands work and how the general just world systems interact without like locking you into a step-by-step tutorial or just throwing like full page explanations up on the screen that, you know, lock your camera while you read them. Like it's really cool. It's like very inspiring and impressive.
It was still also like Chris, you and I watched a guy play through it on the show floor for like a half hour, and even knowing the tiniest bit about how that game is supposed to be played, watching someone just assess it for the first time is like, it creates the feeling of wanting to jump over the couch and like tell the person exactly what to do more than anything in the entire world because of all that stuff. But
also, we don't know if the guy started playing from the first second.
Yeah, I don't think that he did. I think he jumped into the middle of it and was just like, okay, I have a DOS prompt up. Yeah. But it was cool seeing like Brendan's very weird aesthetic of this sort of, he's got like the sort of weird muted shapes, just like everything's very square, cubey stuff, and then he'll have just a weird sort of fanciful interjection on top of that of like really nice piece of graphic design or a character with a really expressive looking face. But it's funny to see that stuff in Quadrilateral Cowboy in service of telling you what the fuck is going on. Like we were watching a like pneumatic tube that contained a door combination slowly move through a laser grid, and whenever the alarm went off, instead of just an alarm going off, 3 rotating alarm lights like spring loaded come bouncing out of the wall and just like dance all over the place. And it looks like it's a moment that makes you laugh in the way that like a lot of Brendan's weird aesthetic choices do, but also you know that he did it so that no matter where you happen to be looking on the screen, an alarm light will fucking come flying into view and tell you that something is going wrong. And
which is so cool because, you know, the other way you could do that is a full screen like effect, or you know,
he's keeping it all in world, but the world is becoming increasingly just heightened and weird because of the fact that the world itself now has to just harass the shit out of you.
And it's cool. One of the things I love about watching, I mean, playing it certainly, but like you almost sort of get the hilarity of this more by watching someone else play, because you can look in all the corners of the screen because you're not playing. You don't need to look at the actual relevant part. Just the weird little details that this guy throws in everywhere, like make those moments where like 3 crazy like alarm deployers like just spring out of nowhere, like totally sell that, because everywhere in the world there's just absurd little details. Like the little alarm bell fixture that rings the bell is this like hilariously detailed little. It looks like an old bell that would be above a shop door, and it rings whenever a pneumatic tube comes into the room. Yeah. And like the little device that you use to like photograph the documents that you have to
so
steal.
camera, the
It's
little,
like this crazy little assemblage that sits on the table and animates a little camera that like moves the pages one by one
Right.
and does a flash photography on each of them. And it's like it's so much more weirdly dense and specific than that device needs to be at all. And the other thing I like about it is that it's so much more dense than like most of the world geometry. But
it makes your perception of the whole world feel like it operates at a different scale.
Yeah.
But because there's these little things throughout
Absolutely.
it makes
But
the
be-
big
but-
walls feel deliberate.
totally.
Yeah.
But they're everywhere. They're not just at
Yeah.
these like important moments. It's like the world is littered with that stuff. When you look around, it makes me feel like when he's developing the game, not just this game, but his games in general, it feels like he must let himself sometimes just get into like the hilarious mode of
Spend 2 days in the document
Yeah.
photographer.
yeah. Like just, or even something more mundane, like just weird little like nut and bolt fixture for like a grate or something. Like, let's just, what if this was like this? Like, and just sort of get into the sinkhole of just sort of fiddling away on something for way longer than it actually needs. But the result is that he actually applies it with a sort of infuriatingly strong artistic consistency across the whole thing. So it just feels like this is what the world is. Like
But I
all
think-
the shapes are big and blocky, but then the details are very intricate. And then the texture work spans everything in between, but like in a way that is not jarring at all. It's
If you wanted
so
to,
cool.
you want to like psychoanalyze Brendan from his game, I think you could draw some conclusions about his geekiness from looking at the level of detail in which different things are rendered. So the
Right.
the technology and the systems and anything that's mechanical and nerdy and interesting is done in meticulous, incredible detail, tiny robotic arms and like beautifully modeled and perfect. And the characters have like meter square heads. It's just like people are just big blocks.
Except,
And then-
you know,
But then he draws a really expressive
Yeah,
face.
the faces
on
are
top
really
of
good.
that
He
lower
does,
his head.
exactly.
it's a great style.
And the
Yeah.
funny thing about the funny thing about his games is that the character interactions, like it's true that the characters are rendered in this like very like rough style. I mean, geometrically anyway. But the funny thing about his games is that even his games that are totally mechanical, like Atom Zombie Smasher, probably more than any of his games, is like very, very, very mechanics heavy. At
Flotilla as well.
and yeah, Flotilla as well. Like the actual moments when characters interact in those games always have such, even when they're like gags, have such poignancy, like such, I don't know how to put it, but like, you know, when the little interstitial cutscenes pop up in Atom Zombie Smasher, and these just like hand drawn like comic panels of like a man and a woman talking, and you're like, what? Like, why is this in this game? It's perfect.
It's funny because a lot of it feels like it comes out of a really practical mentality of like you can look at the art in Quadrilateral Cowboy or 35 Living or Gravity Bone, or like what you're saying about the comic panels, and also just the fidelity choices kind of map
Yeah,
to
totally.
I will render this out to the required fidelity for its point to be made, and no more than that. So, like
Right.
a person can be a cube head as long as they have a well-rendered
Expressive
face.
Yeah.
Or like the most efficient way to deliver the story in Atom Zombie Smasher is probably just comic panels because that game necessitates a story told visually in
Yeah.
between.
But
But his
those
actual
panels are, like,
execution
have
of
this
those
like fine line work
yeah.
and like really
Like, you know,
Yeah,
a
nice
wall
attention
can
to
be a
detail.
wall, but a document camera probably actually needs to
Yeah.
exist. But then the actual
Yeah.
specific choices for how that is made are infuriatingly awesome.
yeah. It's so cool. It's so cool. And even the like he's got these little one of the things that I don't know if this was on purpose or not, but it speaks to Jake what you were just saying. Like the early in the game, you start with a kind of really cleverly stripped down version of your deck where it's not a full computer where you can actually type anything in. It's just a little screen that's like the screen is the size of basically a like feature phone screen or something with about that
Like a graphing calculator or
Yeah, like a
something?
graphing calculator. And it just has like 3 commands, like door2.open3 for like 3 seconds, or like, laser 2.off or something, whatever.
Which are the things you're going to have to be typing later.
Yeah, and you just scroll up and down with W and S, and like the W and S keyboard keys are like rendered physically on this device as if someone just hacked together this thing, and for some reason decided that up and down would actually be W and S like they are in a video game. Like I love those parts about his games where he just takes the construct of like the video game knowledge and just says, well, no, that's whatever. That's just like that's what this device
Right.
is. And it doesn't feel like stupid or cheesy.
Right.
Like it just because the entire thing is rendered with such loving detail, you totally buy it. And like that thing is of a high degree of detail, but then the little like weird in-world prompts that say like, right click to hack or something are in like a old-timey script on like a placard that swing out from a wall, and that is given this like sort of like a little like wrought metal frame around it on this like hinge assembly with like incredibly high level of detail, like the level of detail that you would expect in like a AAA game or something, but just on this weird little tip placard that swings out just so you notice it. And it's like, I wonder if the intention of that is like by being comparatively high density and like high level of detail relative to like just the flat wall this is on and everything around it, like is the player's eye just sort of instinctively drawn to that as like this weird example of visual like flair? I don't know. I don't know if that's on purpose or if he just thought it was fun to like mess around with that, and then in playtesting it turned out it worked. But stuff like that I find fascinating about his games. It's like a level of weird scale, like playing with scale relationships and level of detail relationships that is pretty uncommon in games, because usually a game that tries to represent the world in like even a remotely realistic fashion, that stuff tends to be more consistent, so that everything feels like it's created from the same materials and like, physical processes. I don't know. Brendan Chung is fucking smart.
Yeah.
That's a good note to end on.
Yeah.
Thanks for sitting down with us, Tom.
Thank you for having me. It was great.
Yeah, man. Anytime. For sure.
Cool.
Anytime, just come on by.
Yeah, I mean,
to
like,
America,
flying over.
if you can just like keep praising all the things I do in like really embarrassing ways, that would be fantastic.
Cool. Just keep just make great stuff.
Yeah, man, that's on you.
all you got to do. No big deal. Just
Cool, man.
bye.
Yeah, thanks again.
See ya. Thanks, everyone.
What are you doing?
It's not making eye contact. I just don't feel like making eye contact. I got this mic in front of my face.
Yeah. I'm just staring into Jay Allard's gaze.